Lifuka Island, the administrative center of Tonga's Ha'apai group, is home to a community of 3,000 people. Because of its location near the geologically active Tonga Trench, Lifuka experiences frequent earthquakes. On May 3, 2006, a magnitude 7.9 earthquake caused Lifuka's western coastline to subside by 23 centimeters. Since this event, the island has witnessed significant erosion impacting on houses and key infrastructure located along 3 kilometers of its foreshore area.
Before, they didn't know what is climate change. They liked what the government did for Democrat. The people didn't understand what is Democrat. And same thing is the climate change. The people didn't understand what is climate change. Like then the tsunami. They didn't understand what is tsunami. When the tsunami warning, they ran to the sea and watched what is happening.
Because of this coastal subsidence, Lifuka was chosen to become part of a unique project designed to help other vulnerable Pacific Island communities adapt to rising sea levels.
It's very unique in that there has been this subsidence, rapid subsidence, which has resulted in the equivalent of rapid sea level rise on that particular island. So we were interested in what the dynamics of shoreline erosion and coastal vulnerability were in association with that rapid sea level rise. And that might be a way for us to get a better understanding of what the future might be in terms of processes under current regimes of sea level rise across the region.
You know that Lifuka Island is very smooth, there's no mountain, they don't know where to go. That's the main problem in Lifuka.
We're on the beach, we're waiting for breakfast. And the shade completely wiped out.
On 29 September 2009, a magnitude 8.1 earthquake struck the Samoan Islands, generating a tsunami that killed almost 200 people and left more than 3,000 homeless. This same tsunami also struck the Tongan island of Niua Toputapu, causing 9 deaths and destroying 60% of buildings in a community of just 1,000 people. Many families were left homeless and a total of 73 new houses were built further inland as part of the government's reconstruction efforts.
Tsunami ko na hoko ko giliwa ko yun na paro matatao yun na hoko ko pare uma na hake tahi au ko loi fari ki ko pare pe hake mai tahi lot uma o sia no ki nau pare ko pe ai si ba mo si ko mo ne o vela I pe que fe uma pare que fa no ko na ko ai pau na ha que tahi ko nga kai a fa tu ta ma ma iki mai le ma
The Lifuka project was managed by the Government of Tonga with support from the Australian Pacific Adaptation Strategy Assistance Program. The project was designed to help the community to determine the practical actions it can take to adapt to the growing impacts of climate change, such as coastal erosion. It is also hoped that the Lifuka project will help to provide critical lessons for the many remote and vulnerable communities that lie scattered throughout the Pacific Ocean. In many ways, the coastline of Lifuka Island is the coastline of a future Pacific. Whales have always held a special significance for the voyaging peoples of Polynesia. Throughout the South Pacific, many traditional stories and myths depict whales as guardians or even as relatives. Every winter, from July to October, these humpback whales make the long journey from their feeding grounds in the Antarctic to mate and nurse their young in the warm waters of the coast of Lifuka. Today, after nearly being hunted to extinction, Lifuka is one of the few places in the world where people can swim freely with these majestic creatures. Set aside from the rapidly changing tides of the modern world, the people of Lifuka take great pride in their traditions, their ancestors, and their attachment to their land.
Lifuka is very special for me. Not only that I was born in Lifuka, that is where I spend most of my life. Not only that, Lifuka, I can say, that is the only island in Tonga, in the Kingdom of Tonga, as I said, that still have the respective of the Tongan living, like the parents and the children, the respect of the children with the fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters. There is a way of living in Tongan. I know it's only in Lifuka and in Hapai, I think I can say, that they still have that way of Tongan living in life. The respective of the families.
The Lifuka project took a unique approach by combining scientific surveys of the coastline and groundwater resources together with community surveys and discussions about their coastal problems and the potential solutions. Experts from the Secretariat of the Pacific Community and the Tonga Community Development Trust worked closely with government agencies to involve the community in the collection and analysis of the scientific data.
Normally we might go out and do a technical survey and actually look at the technical baselines and technical impacts of this phenomena. But now we're able to actually cross over into the social side of this a little bit more as well. So not only look at what the impacts have been, but look at how the community is perceiving those impacts and what they see as solutions, and see how we can integrate all of this together to come up with perhaps not what are just good technical solutions, but ones that are going to work in the context of that community, that environment, ones that they can live with for the next 50 years and maintain, etc.
In the case of Lifuka, we found black and white photography, aerial photography, dating back to 1968. And then we had a series of 5 images through 4 decades to the present day. So we did have some information to discern what happened in the past. And it turns out that coastal erosion was actually a problem even before the earthquake and the subsidence. So it looks like parts of the coastline, at least, have experienced up to 40 meters of erosion in the last 4 decades.
A good example on the coastal erosion is the western side of Lifuka, where the hospital is located. At the time, the sea reached some of the hospital buildings. And last year, the Ministry of Health built a temporary force wall. All of those houses on that line, as I know that you've been there in that site, most of those houses were built on the land. But now, 1/4 or half of those houses stands in the sea.
It wasn't just simply a tectonic movement, subsidence that caused the erosion. There seems to have been a lot of development on the coast as well that sort of has interrupted the sediment supply in the past, so the beaches were not as healthy and able to naturally adjust to any changes, natural changes that were occurring. So you have additional impacts of people sand mining, so taking sand from the beaches for construction purposes or other purposes. I mean, at the moment there's probably 30% of the population that lives within 120 meters of the shoreline have experienced flooding, and a large proportion of those households are experiencing erosion on an annual basis, flooding on an annual basis. And I think with climate change or further subsidence, there are going to be more people that will need assistance.
Further economic analysis was provided to help determine 3 main options for adapting to future sea level rise and storm surge in the western coastal zone of Lifuka. These 3 main options were then taken back for consultation with the Tongan government and the local communities in Lifuka.
The option 1 is the sand replenishment. So one of the problem with the option, as I know, it will have to following up every 3 to 5 years, and it did budget for that. And if not, I think it would be, it will end up with the same problem as it is now. The second option is we have to move or relocate 100 meters or more than that inland, away from the coast. And one of the problems with this option is land issues. It's the land issues. Because our land is too small, and the government reserve is not much left. Because most of the land are already owned by the people. And it would take time and a lot of work to negotiate with the landowners. The third option is to build a foreshore for protection. From my point of view, this is the best option, not only for protection, but to save our land as it is now. And for the long run, it will last many years. Because we want to preserve our land, not only for us, but for our children and our next generation.
Before the project began, the community was strongly in favor of building a seawall to protect their foreshore area. Some initial attempts had already been made to trial a seawall made of sandbags, but this structure was quickly eroded by storm surges.
We had the presentation last night, and a group has to be split it up, and they have to select a leader and they debate on the free option, and you all come up at the end with the same answer. The youth and women, and so is the men. They still prefer the revetment. I guess for them, when they look at the revetment, it's a one-time, all the work is put up for them and they don't have to do anything for the next 30 years. And that's the thing, the revetment advantage. Revetment has is just they now know it's 30 years for maintenance, period. Because the one in Tonga has been 30 years now and no maintenance at all.
Any engineered revetment designed to fix the location of the Lifuka coastline would also have to be a permeable structure. This means that during extreme events, it would have to let water pass through in order to break up and absorb the energy of the waves. While such a revetment could protect the land from erosion, it would not prevent inundation unless a very robust and highly expensive coastal defense was constructed.
The revetment that we sized as part of this project was for a 100-year return interval storm. So something that has the chance, a 1% chance of occurring in any 1 year. So it's actually ended up being quite a large revetment. So we're talking about 8 meters wide and 4 meters high. And constructing something like that in Lifuka would cost a lot of money. So we're looking at more than 5,000 paanga per meter. So for a coastline that needs protecting, several kilometers of coastline, is going to be a big expense.
The ability of a small rural community to be able to fund the maintenance schedules associated with a large engineered structure, it's an impossibility. Because we're talking millions of dollars here. So those sorts of realities, I think, they need to be very clearly explained to the community. So you can take this path, but there will be consequences, and how do we manage those consequences?
Say, well, maybe we don't need such a big revetment, maybe we can go for a smaller one to buy us time, but what that does is that you are arresting erosion and you're mitigating against some of those higher frequency events, but it gives people a false sense of security. So I guess what ends up in what we've seen in a lot of places is that the foreshore or the coastal areas will see even more development because people think they are protected by this revetment, and where in fact they're at greater risk from extreme events.
I recall at the beginning they were only saying foreshore because that was the only option that they have seen it's working, especially in Nuku'alofa.
they weren't aware of other options. Now the whole process has provided them with other information and other options, and in fact the discussions was based on comparative advantages of these options. They weren't just too narrow on focus on foreshore. They were considering other options.
I'm not really convinced that a donor or external funding will be able to provide this level of funding that's required to build a revetment, because we're talking about 500 households and 3,000 people. So I think the option of planned retreat, in my mind, is still the better option, and taking into consideration that will happen not overnight but over generations. And as people build new houses, they should think very carefully about siting it in areas that are outside of the hazardous area zones.
Here in Hawaii, that's one of the issues that facing retreat is the unavailability of land. I'm not saying that it's not impossible. There may be land out there, but the government or whoever need to buy it out and then subdivide it and then do the relocation. And then the next question is who's paying for the houses? You're not going to have the same houses you have before, but it may be good to some people.
Tevita Sisitotai and his family had to abandon their home because of the direct impact of the coastal subsidence. They were allocated land 100 meters inland, where he built a new home with materials they could afford. Tevita is one of the few people in Lifuka who believes that planned migration inland is the best option for the community.
Ke hiki mai me me tahi seifi ane o ke are hata hai ku alupe peliria ke ya malunga tahi e ka ai for so ai e tatau ai pe ko ne pau pana ke ko vi ku ka ke tahi u sai ane pe ke o mai lo to no ano ku mai ke no me ya pe ke sia tu pe ko na ke me foguei na Tonga que iloi nga que nau sio que o nga que sai pe me a que sai an que vai ua nga que ka kai con na hi me tahi ki utani e fa na to con ki ai ma konga ki ai pe a konga ki ko so a nga que e sai for so a pe te kaurei pe que kau.
Rather than trying to engineer a safe solution in their present location, it's cheaper, it's better, it's ultimately so much better for the well-being of the community and the long-term safety of the community if we can find other areas that are out of harm's way and you have a staged, sensitive, voluntary relocation process.
Some of these things, they worry about the length of time that it's going to take for negotiations on settlement with regard to moving inland. It's going to take ages. Obtaining a piece of land, everybody knows it's not an overnight thing. For them, for sure, is not only the option, but because it can be done quickly.
They still entertain in their mind the planned migration. But at the same time, they want to stop the retreat of the coastline. So they want to hold the coastline and then do a planned migration. It may come up with a combination.
The information really has to come from government to provide them with the right information on how to construct their houses and also incentives on relocating them to other locations. So I suppose if the Tongan government were to use resources to improve infrastructure away from the coast and at higher elevated positions, then this might be incentive for people to build in those areas.
My view is to be patient. I think time is a fact because we all know that the donor-driven projects are confined to time. And working in communities, as we all understand, is more complicated. They are not standstill stones where we can just come in and work accordingly to our time and our cost. But we have to be patient and more open-minded, especially when it comes to things that they are attached to.
Very difficult for the islands. I mean, that's their farm out there, right? And like I said, until it happens to them, then they'll be more careful, and they will start to think twice about moving to the coastline, right? So here in Hawaii, it's difficult because nothing has. The last tsunamis only end up on just a lift of the waves at the wharf, not very much of no damages. So maybe they need to be reminded in a much bigger way.
Wow. O kai peke o tui tatawa mo na tolu. O ngai o sayang ke o mai ki loto fonu. O ngai o yan au tolu o na o ke no fo pe na tolu ya ta. O mo ni o i fo pe no fo i ta hi he alo mari e ka ko ni alta ma ki veu ka e o dia i. Ya ko vi veia ko nga e te wesi ala ya to kale o kitaya he. Unga he afu ma eta hi papa.
In rural locations like Lifuka, with limited available land, Pacific Island governments must develop viable and practical solutions that will enable communities to adapt effectively to the changing coastline of a future Pacific. It is clear that no form of seawall can be built to stop the rising tide. Eventually, over time, all communities like Lifuka will be forced to move inland away from their most hazardous coastal zones.
We will simply stop investing our money in those coastal areas because it will eventually just not make sense for us. You know, if you know an area floods all the time, you're not going to build your house there. Why would you invest your money in building a house in an area that floods all the time? So you're going to see a gradual movement, irrespective of whether we decide it's a smart strategy now or not.
Whatever the outcome, the Lifuka project has clearly shown that any solutions must ultimately start and end with the local communities that are most vulnerable to the increasing impacts of rising sea levels.
Some of the people, especially older ages, who were born here and grew up here, and I think they have knowledge and experiences in changing that happen in their lifetime, including nature. And I think that will be useful and helpful for the scientific analysis.
Scientists tend to, look at the ground and measure things and not really talk to the people. And you just have to find the guy that's been living on the beach for, the last few decades, and he'll tell you, exactly what you're probably looking at. And so this local knowledge is often not very well incorporated into studies such as this. So I think in the future we can really learn from this and incorporate the social element with the scientific element.
For Tevita and his family, the impact of climate change is no longer a question that can be answered at some point in the future. The question of adaptation is now very much a part of their daily struggle to build a better life for today.
Kalau beke hau ke family ko nga ke yung no forget ko nga ko tu mai ko ki pare ta mini yo ko tu lu ya ka ku nga ka ko ke nga beke kalau be ko I fo ta beke ko ke fai pe nga ka ku ki nga we ya ku pe unga pe mo tai pong e ka le ka ku mau ke fe nga pe ta mini ke fa halanga ko no moni e baki penga e family aya ko ka le ka to ki
I think what we have to do is get past this idea that it's just an interesting report for a few people that sits on someone's desk, but it's a tool. It's a tool for that country to use to leverage bilateral support to implement the solutions that they have selected appropriate for their community.